Well, hello and good morning. Today I'm going to walk into my studio and we are going to do a very nice, simple day today. We are going to be painting the drawing from yesterday. I've had a lot of questions about painting and how I paint and what kind of textures I use in my painting. And I thought I would take a bit of time to kind of go through some of the painting. I painted the whale the other day and I kind of basically did a part video because I sometimes feel like the painting parts go too far, too long, and people lose interest. But today we're going to paint the beautiful snake from yesterday's drawing. Hello and welcome back. We are going to get on today with some painting. We're going to get some painting going on. And we're just going to basically run through some of the very basics that I go through with my my painting process. And one of the beginning parts are that I tend to use very simple paints. I don't really like. And the first thing that I will do is I will just spray some water on them just to wake them up and get them back to life while I'm talking and getting ready. The spraying on the water just kind of revitalizes and wakes them up, gets them back to life. And the only difference really with my painting here really is that my water that I use for paints is usually in a little cup, and that's my little cup made by my daughter in a little ceramic thing. Zazie, thank you very much for my little pot. She made that for me when she was in Korea, and it's a small pot. It's a tiny little thing where I use my water, and then I have my other bigger jugs of water for kind of as I call keeping the dirt. Okay, it kind of when I don't want to just keep the paint in the brush, I will rinse them out through some dirty water, which adds to the texture in the paint. Kind of a little bit complicated probably, but it's a process that I've used quite often, that I don't really use the big pots. I've got quite a few big pots. There are different mixtures, and it keeps me in control then of a small pot of clear water that I can go away and I can top up and go away and top up, and it keeps it clean. Whereas everything else is an addition to the paint, adding texture to the paint, putting in some dirty water to kind of get that muddy textures in your paint, which for me add a lot to the process, to the character, especially like if I'm doing around eyes. I generally like to add a little bit of a textured kind of dirtiness about their eyes and things like that. So that's generally the differences in my painting style. Apart from that, I have a very bad habit of mixing traditional watercolor paints and adding ink. I'm sure a lot of people would probably do that, but for me, it adds a little bit more. I find sometimes the watercolors can be quite dull, and I find that sometimes adding a little bit of inks to it kind of brings it to life a little bit, just peeps it up a little bit. So today we are going to attempt to paint my snake, and I'm going to start off very, very simply with a nice green. I'm going to try and do a green snake with a kind of a yellow belly to him. Now, again, back to the differences with inks, and before I begin, I do find that, like, for example, if you was to buy a Winsor Newton orange, no, it's lemon yellow, but it comes out with a very orangey tint to it. It's not a very clean yellow. Whereas I tend to use some of the acrylics, which are, you can see the difference there with and that kind of gives it a brighter kind of shine to it. So sometimes I will be very sensitive about certain brands and certain colors. Yellows and stuff like that with Winsor Newton, I'm not so popular, not so keen on. I do go for other brands. I mean, even to the eco lines, do a beautiful orange, for example. And I do go through a lot of the eco lines oranges. There's one there, look, staring at me. The eco line oranges. And I do find that they really do kind of have a brightness about them. And they do grades of the orange as well. And I do... Is that another? Well, there you are. There's two different oranges, are they? Yeah, there you go. And you can see the differences. And this one is a particular favorite. I do go through quite a few jars of that. 235. 235. And the other one is 111. 311, sorry. And so the brightness also has a lot to do with the style of your final drawing. So when you are doing that, do get little bit of paper. In fact, you can see there how I've done my tester earlier on with my Winsor yellow. In fact, if I was to just dip my finger in that and put a yellow, you will be able to see the difference in the vibrance, and they are both a yellow. And you can see very, very, very clearly without me dropping it on my drawing. You can see very clearly that they are both yellows, and this one has a much more bright feeling to it. It's almost, I find with the Winsor Newton, they've almost gone into a slight oranges feel to it. So I would be tempted again to feel out your colors, feel what works for you and what works in a balance across your drawing before you start to do it. And little test pieces of paper. I often have little test pieces of paper on the side of my drawing. When I'm painting something up, I will test the paint and test the paint. Okay, so we're going to get on here, and I am actually going to start off with that yellow. I am going to be very I'm sure a lot of people will hate this, but I will start off with a blob of my color. Get my brush nice and wet, and I will start to work that already in. And I'm sure a lot of the professional people, well, I'm a professional person, but you know, a lot of the other more whatever the word is, will kind of look at my method and find it quite irritating. But for me, it's a great way to be able to control my consistency of my paint. And again, I'm going to put that on with the eyes just to kind of give him that. And it's, again, I'm working with what I have here already. Now that is going to take a little bit of time to dry, and I'm going to stay clear from it in that beginning process. But you will find that the depending also on your taste, you know, for me, I like a little bit of vibrancy in there. I like a little bit of, you know, and that's also later on I'll be talking about doing some of the comics, and I do find that generally across the board the advice is not to use too many vibrant colors in your comics. And that was, for me, that was the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted my comic to stand out. I wanted it to call warmth. I wanted it to call that friendliness. And that is why you will see that in my comic, Little China, which is what we will be talking about later on, Little China, you will find that if you flick through you'll see the colors are very bright and very vibrant. And you will see that every page is so bright. And my approach on that was to welcome the people in, to basically say, come, look how friendly this is, you know, and in a way that my comic could be viewed by somebody of my age or somebody of 10 years old, you know, 8 years old. If they can understand the very simple, cute stories, what it will do is I'm trying to give this a feeling that once you've read it, it gives you this warmth. It gives you this beauty of life type of feeling, you know. And that was something that I desperately worked very hard at the beginning. And even with the color of the panda, you will see that he is a purple. He is a purple bear. And the purple is somewhere in between a boy and a girl, you know, like across genders. I wanted him to be somewhere, you know. Okay, in the story he is a boy, but the appeal, the color appeal, I wanted it to be something that it isn't a bright pinky purple, and I didn't want it to be a reddy blue purple dark. And so I took a lot of time. In fact, it comes up a little bit better in the comic. You can see in the comic, you can see the colors are quite soft. I don't know how that comes up on camera, but it's a very, very, very nice mix. And the intent was to appeal across all genders, that across all eyes, you know, that you would look at it and you would feel a very neutral type love for this character. So we are going to get into our paint now. It has soaked enough, and I'm going to get in there and I'm going to be in fact, I might even just, I'm just going to take those off, as I'm sure I will get some people that will get in there and right. Now my approach here is to add a little bit, if the camera has seen that, hopefully you've seen that I've mixed a little bit of the color before, which is a yellow, and I've mixed it in with the green in an attempt to soften down. You see that for me is already starting to worry me, that it's already so dark. And that is a very, very common problem with a lot of people that use watercolors and paints. That is enough paint for most of this character. Now, you will find that generally people use far too much paint. And the beauty of watercolors is that, you see, by adding that little bit of yellow, it just kind of dulls it down a little bit. I have to be careful because below me, Mr. Mirosh is keep dropping his ball for me to kick for him. And when I step back, then I step on a ball, and it's kind of like Laurel and Hardy, you know, I kind of go flying across the room. Now that has worked very, very, very nice. I'm hoping that you can kind of feel from that grade that it has given me a slight, almost shadow feeling to it. And that, for me, has come up beautiful. In the way that I'm trying to add a color for the color that will be above, a brighter green, a brighter feeling of a green, maybe even an ink. But I wanted that kind of darker texture below it. And you could even be very brave and add a little bit more in there to kind of keep some texture. Again, using the same paint, not using a darker paint. Again, another problem that bugs me about some people that are painting. They're painting something and then they're adding a darker color for a texture when you could basically water down and simplify down the under level and then add the same color to give you that texture. And it will be very gentle and it will bleed. You can see that it will bleed in. But what it will do is it will give you a very beautiful, let me put my paints in my hand so that you can kind of see a little bit more of how I'm doing this. And I'm being very gentle here. I'm being very gentle with the watercolors because I don't want anything in this painting to be hard. Now, my initial feeling is that the color is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. But I wanted that darker texture. And this is where I change my brush and I go for a dirty, horrible brush that is in my dirty, horrible water over there. And I'll test it on my paper. Lovely. So you can see by now, adding just dirty water brings in that lovely density to the drawing. And it adds an almost like a gray tone. And that is just dirty water. It is not colors. It is not using, like a lot of temptation would be to go and get the darker colors. And I can add a darker color in there. If needed, I could add some more green. You know, I'll put a little bit in there just to, you can see that on this side, I will put a little bit more green into it and you'll see the difference. Just by adding that green. But for my approach, I much prefer putting down the color and then adding that dirty water to bring it down a tone. And that, for me, works much better than adding all these colors and getting to a point where you kind of get a little bit, I feel trapped sometimes with some of those techniques. And there we have a very nice beginning feeling for our character. And I'm going to put that back in the dirty. Don't get your brushes mixed up. And I'm back to my water and my brush, and I'm going to start to bring some of that color back in. The same color that we had, and I'm going to get to the join between those in the last moment if I can do it. I don't want to do it too early and too quick. But I do want to join the yellow before it gets too dry. And that, again, with the use of the water, it will find a balance between the colors, which is very, very beautiful. I always kind of feel like you can put down a yellow and then put down a green and then put lots of water and they will just kind of find each other. And the way that they find each other is a beautiful, natural look for your colors. And I love that. I love that. And I'm just adding a little bit more color on the back of the head there. A little bit more paint. Again, I'm trying to balance up that feeling there. More water. What are you up to, Mr. Mirror? I can't even see him. Oh, there he is. Mr. Mirror loves to hide under my desk, and usually under my desk he kind of adds this sound quality to my videos. Like a shuffle, 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 shuffle. And on some of the earlier videos, people would say, what is that sound on your... I think you have a problem with your microphone. I said, no, I have a problem with my dog. So, I probably won't be able to do all of the painting today. But this will be enough to give you an insight into what I am doing and how I paint up my characters. And I do very much like to kind of add a kind of blotchy approach to my painting. I don't like it to be too smooth. And again, you can see at this point here, I'm basically only adding water, and the water is already starting to give a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful feeling about who this character is. And now it's time to mix that in, which again, just at the right time. We've taken ourselves away to do something and come back to touch it. And that is part of the skill of painting, is that you need to kind of be patient sometimes. Right, I need a little bit more down on here. And as you can see from my painting approach here, that I'm using very, 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 very little paint. In fact, if you can see that I'm actually approaching it more on a texture thing, trying to get the texture of the snake. Still keeping it soft, still trying to keep that that character soft, but at the same time using as much of my water, my green water, my water in my little tub, of water that is only been used for the green. And that will give me a very consistent view across the character, which is very, very important when you're coming down to doing these, that you are kind of keeping a consistency with your colors. Now, one of the things that I would probably say with painting I am dreadful at is being patient. I am not a patient person, and I do want every painting that I do to be done to catch the same vibrancy of the ink. And with the ink, I like to draw something quick, and I like to see the lines being put down in a quick manner, not so that I can rush through my drawing, but so that I can catch that vibrant line that's above me. Mr. Mirror's got a teddy bear by my feet, and he's beating the backs of my legs. And again, this kind of blotchiness here is helping me. Again, I'm going back to my water. Back to my water. And as you can see, I've used a very thick cartridge paper here. And if you're painting and you want to do it the proper way, you should tape down each sides and put a layer of water first. I'm far too impatient to do all that. But if you want to do it in a proper way, I would say that. Another ball by my feet. He's trying to catch me, isn't he? Right, now I'm going to just put my brush down. I'm going to take my dirty water because I want to get a little bit more texture down here. And you can see straight away that dirty water texture that's come straight back, kind of to be your friend. It comes back in to darken things down in a way of almost adding a small kind of shadow to what you've done. And you might not want that in your drawing, but for me, I do feel that it kind of adds an area of shadow. It helps to build the texture by having soft colors and darker colors. And again, you could probably go in there and just touch in under where and the beauty of that is that it will come across in a very subtle texture. And once this dries down, you will see that the differences between the inks and the paints they kind of dry differently, and that helps to any texture of an animal or whatever you are doing. I'm just adding some of the paint with the dirt, and again, I'm very, very, very pleased with that. Back into the dirty water. So what we've achieved here already from our character is a very consistent blotch across the character, and that blotchiness for me is something that I love to see. I do love to see. Searle is very, very good. Ronald Searle is very good with his textures, and when one thing's dry, then you can go in and you can kind of add an additional level. I'm not sure we'll get to that point today. Maybe I'll even go into that side, which is and you can see the way that kind of texture of the snake is really, really coming across. And I'm very pleased with that. I'm just going to add a little bit more into this area around the eyes. I feel that it has gone too light. Much better. And the same probably behind. I'll just go in and darken that up. And again, back to our kind of our eyes. Just touch that on. And now by having the base of the grey underneath, it really helps a lot. From my mind, it really brings out the texture much, 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 much more. So, a good way for me to show you the differences here with the colors will be, I will do the tip of the tail with some Winsor Newton inks. Knowing the fact that I have done the acrylic here, and I need some water. And again, I am using the same green, the water with a tint of green in it, and that again is to help the overall tone of the painting. And I'll go in there and I'll add a nice, as Winsor Newton have said, it's a it's a sunshine yellow, and I really don't feel any sunshine yellow here. I do feel a much more orange approach to it, a much more orange feeling. And that again comes down to a simple thing of, it might actually be nice to add a little bit to the eye here. And although that might look quite hard on the eye, it will soften down. It'll give us, because everything's still wet and it's all soaking into each other. All the colors, the oranges are soaking into the yellows, and the yellow is soaking into the white of the paper. So it's softening everything down. But it gives me a very nice, gentle feeling. And if I can... Now, I've seen some of the more kind of... Well, I've seen people that are, you know, every 5 minutes they are working with their hair dryer and stuff like that. If you're really working on a landscape or something where you are painting the sky and the ocean, and you're painting things on the ocean and in the sky, yes. But if you're working on a character like this, and you're working on the head and the shoes and the hands, and you should find that there's enough drying time across your picture. And by doing so, that it also helps you with your drying time and your balance across the picture. The picture will soften down into giving that feeling that it is one drawing, which I love. And I know that when you look at some, again, going back to Ronald Searle, when you look back at like Ronald Searle and what he's doing, you can kind of get this feeling that it's a picture. It's not somebody has painted a leg. And so already for me, I'm very happy with the fact that my snake has got a one tone. You can be the only thing you need to be careful of is just there. Can you see that orange or that sun yellow from Windsor is starting to bleed into my tail? Just enough, and you catch it and you just stop the bleed. But when it's starting to bleed here, it will add to your texture of your character. And don't be afraid of adding that. Don't be afraid. So here we have a very... Now, the only thing here is that I've got kind of yellowy orange teeth. I've got yellowy orange eyes. I've got yellowy orange tip of his tail, his rattle. And I've got yellows and oranges on the body. And we're now at this point of approaching a tongue. And I need to think of a color that is going to work there with the tongue. And my first idea is to do a darker green, and I'm kind of tempted to do a blue, and I'm just trying to... Now, as you can see, do I have a dry part on my painting? There we are. There is my little test paper on the side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop a little bit of blue in there, and that's very, 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 very dark. But if I was to go in there with my water, I might actually come up. Can you see that? What a fantastic color that is. Just by bringing the colors of that are already on my paintbrush, which is my yellows and my oranges and my greens. And it will give me a color that might work rather a kind of a turquoise blue almost. And that kind of turquoise blue, using my paleted or my infected, as maybe the purists might say, infected with the yellows onto my blue to give me this fantastic turquoise tongue. Now, I would love to get all your comments about my dreadful state of paint. But there, for me, that's falling into the colors that are around my character. And that means, because I've controlled everything, obviously we can go with the jacket, we can do a a simple gray or something like that. But then once I've got these blues in there, the turquoise blue and the greens and the yellows and a tiny touch of orange, we have kept it into a very small palette across that character. Now, what that also will do, once that dries down, it gives me a scope of what I can do for the background. I could put a really nice sky blue in there and my character would pop. I could put a red background in and my character would pop. Do you see the way that I'm using a paletted character to help with my backgrounds, to help with what the surroundings are? And that for me is working out very, very, very lovely. I do have well, again, I'm tempted. I could do it with a grey jacket because I wanted it to be a leather jacket. And I'm very tempted to simply go back to my dirty water. Wow. Just by adding the dirty water. It's the same brush that I used when I was touching up around the character. And that dirty water is going to, there's been greens and blues and oranges and pinks and purples and everything going into this. And it's all just changed into this muddy. In fact, if I was to be very devious and jump into a little bit more on this side, you can see this got a little bit more texture to it, a little bit more of the old grain of some of the more fancier paints, and they have a little bit more of a sandier texture, in my opinion. And you can see that by dipping into that, it gives this jacket a much more kind of rugged texture to it, and I very, 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 very much like that. Be careful, don't paint your money brown. And as you can see with my paintbrush, I'm quite sloppy. I'm quite messy. And if my painting teacher was here, I'd probably get a rap on the knuckles. But in the same way that if you look at someone like, what's your man called? He's up there. Quentin Blake style. If you were an art teacher and you were to look at some of the lovely paintings of Quentin Blake, you'd probably have a heart attack. You'd probably be screaming and you couldn't eat your breakfast because his style is so dreadful. His painting techniques are awful. And he never ever does it. I can imagine hearing them scream. But the passion in those drawings, the absolute excitement across that wash across the bushes, for me, is beautiful. It's really beautiful. In the same way that my mucky old jacket, my dirty old splashed, splodged leather jacket looks beautiful. And that is it for today. That is all the questions answered from all those people who keep asking me about, how did you paint that drawing on your... You did the drawing, but you didn't do the painting. Well, there's everything. I've given you all my secrets. That is how I painted. And that is it. And it's just about getting in there to be part of your drawing, to be part of your painting, and to see why you are painting it. For me, it was the textures of the snake. For me, I wanted, and I might even... It's probably a little bit too early for me to jump in there, but since I've got another 1 minute going, then I'll jump in and I will try and gently add some very watered textures to the snake's body. And what it will do is it would just emphasize that whole texture of the snake's body. And it's not, again, about being perfect, you know. For all you people that keep asking me, how do I do a perfect what? Don't ask, okay? Perfection is this. Perfection is what you think perfection is, okay? Now, if you want to draw like Leonardo da Vinci or Rembrandt, or do you want to feel your drawing? Do you want to feel what you're trying to put across in your picture? In the same way that someone like Quentin Blake might do. And I do love Quentin Blake for his whole kind of approach of, well, this is capturing the mood. And you look at some of his books. I've got loads of Quentin Blake's illustrated books. In fact, he's even done some of his own books. No, he's not with Roald Dahl and people. He does do some of his own books, and I find that they're absolutely delightful. He's done some poetry books that were part of my inspiration for doing my own poetry book. The fact that it had such a come and read me type of feeling. And as soon as you pick up the book and you look at the cover, you just go, oh, I want to read that. I want to buy that. And yes, if you came to my house, you might think that I have like 400 children or something because of all the children's books around in my house. But I love children's books. I love them too. Now that, for me, is perfection. That, for me, is a perfect character, a perfect feeling and the mood about this character. And I am extremely happy with that. The background is back as just white at the moment, and we can do anything we want with it. That's irrelevant. But to really do that, I do want this to dry. Everything now is wet and everything is moving and blending into each other. And for that will give me a surprise at the end. In a couple of hours' time, I'll come back and look at it, and I'll be surprised about how beautiful and how perfect that drawing is. And yours will be too, if you want it to be perfect and you feel what you're painting and why you're painting it, why you're adding more water, why you're adding less paint, why you're adding more paint, why are you doing levels of paint. You will start to feel more about what you're painting. So that is my little painting lesson for today. And that was the same style for my Clonkin' and Clankin', my little China book. All of those pictures, if you can go in and see them close up, they're all like watercolor drawings, as is this. It's all kind of like a watercolor effect. And I wanted those comics to be that. There's one there of him on the sitting next to the ocean. You can see it's all painted up into textures. You can see all the characters. Print isn't so good on this book, but you can see that even the panda is painted with a dark shadow and everything like that. So there's a lot of work that's gone into it, and I will talk about that in a different video. But that is today's video. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you haven't liked or sent me a comment, why not? I would love to know what you think of today's beautiful and gorgeous snake. I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.